How to deal with narcissistic people without losing your sanity. Imagine you're talking to someone who always has to be right. You explain how you feel. They tell you you're too sensitive. You point out something they did. Suddenly, you're the problem. You try to have a calm conversation. But somehow, you end up apologizing. And later, you sit alone thinking, wait, how did that conversation even happen? If you've ever experienced something like this, you may have dealt with someone who shows strong narcissistic or self-centered behavior. But here's the important part. You don't need to diagnose someone to recognize unhealthy behavior. The real question is, how can you protect your peace when dealing with someone who constantly turns everything back onto you? The answer isn't to defeat them. It's to stop allowing their behavior to control your emotional world. Let's discover how. First, stop trying to win every argument. This may be the hardest lesson. When someone constantly twists conversations, your natural reaction may be to explain yourself more. You think, if I just explain it clearly enough, they'll understand. So you explain, then explain again, then provide examples, then give evidence. But somehow the conversation keeps moving in circles. Why? Because not every disagreement is actually about finding the truth. Sometimes the other person simply wants to win. And when you realize that, your strategy needs to change. You don't have to prove every point. You don't have to convince them that your feelings are valid. Sometimes the strongest response is simply, I understand that you see it differently. Then stop. You don't need to keep feeding the argument. Second, learn to recognize the pattern. Healthy disagreements usually move toward understanding. Unhealthy conversations often follow a predictable cycle. Something happens. You raise a concern. The other person denies it. Then they blame you. You defend yourself. They bring up something completely unrelated. You defend that. Suddenly, discussing 5 different problems. And you completely forget what started the conversation. Recognizing this pattern is powerful. Because once you see it happening, you can stop participating in it. You can say, we're discussing one issue right now. Let's stay with that. If the conversation becomes disrespectful, you can end it. You don't have to stay in every argument simply because someone wants to continue it. Third, stop expecting them to react like you would. This is where many people become frustrated. You might think, if I hurt someone's feelings, I would apologize. So why can't they? If someone explained their problem to me, I would listen. Why won't they listen to me? Because people are different. You cannot control another person's willingness to understand you. You can communicate clearly. You can explain your feelings. You can ask for respectful behavior. But you cannot force someone to become self-aware. Once you accept that, something interesting happens. You stop spending so much energy trying to change them. And you start focusing on what you can control. Your choices. Your boundaries. Your responses. Fourth, create clear boundaries. A boundary isn't a threat. It is a statement about what you will do. For example, if you start insulting me, I'm going to end this conversation. That's a boundary. But saying, you better stop insulting me or else, may simply create another argument. The difference is important. A healthy boundary focuses on your own actions. You don't need permission to protect your time, attention, or personal space. And here's something surprising. A boundary doesn't become real because you explain it 10 times. It becomes real when you consistently follow through. If someone keeps turning every conversation into an argument, you can end the conversation. If someone repeatedly pressures you, you can step away. You don't need a dramatic announcement every time. Sometimes consistency speaks louder than confrontation. Fifth, don't give every provocation a reaction. Some conversations become exhausting because every little comment pulls you into an emotional response. An insult, a sarcastic remark, a personal accusation, a dramatic statement. You immediately defend yourself. Then another comment appears. And another. Suddenly, you're emotionally exhausted. One useful approach is to pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, does this actually need a response? Not every statement deserves your energy. Sometimes you can say, okay, I hear you. I disagree. We can talk about this later. Short responses can prevent unnecessary arguments. This doesn't mean being cold or rude. It means choosing your battles. Sixth, keep your sense of reality. One of the most confusing experiences in a difficult relationship can be constantly questioning yourself. You remember an event one way. The other person describes it completely differently. You start thinking, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe everything really is my fault. When this happens repeatedly, keeping a clear record of important events can help you stay grounded. Write down what happened while you still remember it clearly. Not to build a case against someone. Not to obsess over the past. Simply to help yourself distinguish between what actually happened and what you're being told happened. If you're dealing with serious conflict, talking to a trusted adult, counselor, teacher, or another supportive person can also give you perspective. You don't have to figure everything out alone. Seventh, protect your emotional energy. Imagine you have a phone battery. Every argument drains 20%. Every accusation drains another 15%. Every stressful conversation drains another 10%. Eventually, you have nothing left. That's why recovery matters. Spend time doing things that remind you who you are outside the difficult relationship. Talk to supportive people. Study. Exercise in healthy ways. Create something. Read. Listen to music. Spend time with people who treat you respectfully. Your entire identity should not become centered around managing one difficult person. You are allowed to have a life beyond the conflict. Eighth, don't confuse kindness with unlimited access. Being kind doesn't mean allowing someone to treat you badly. Being understanding doesn't mean accepting endless disrespect. And forgiving someone doesn't automatically mean you have to give them unlimited access to your time or attention. You can care about someone and still need distance. You can understand someone's struggles and still say no. You can wish someone well and still protect yourself from unhealthy behavior. These ideas can exist together. But what if the person is someone you can't avoid? Maybe it's a family member, a classmate, a teacher, a coworker, or someone you regularly encounter. In that situation, completely avoiding them may not be possible. So focus on reducing unnecessary conflict. Keep conversations focused on practical matters. Don't reveal every personal thought to someone you don't trust. Don't feel pressured to respond immediately. And when a conversation becomes disrespectful, step away when you safely can. You don't have to turn every interaction into a battle. Sometimes the goal isn't to change the person. It's simply to make the interaction healthier and more manageable for you. And here's the most important lesson. You cannot control whether someone is narcissistic, defensive, arrogant, manipulative, or simply difficult. But you can control how much power their behavior has over your attention. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need everyone to agree with you. And you don't need to convince someone to respect you before you begin respecting yourself. Sometimes peace begins when you stop asking, "How can I make this person understand me?" and start asking, "What can I do to protect my own well-being?" That's a completely different question. And it gives you something incredibly valuable: control over your own response. So, the next time you find yourself trapped in an exhausting conversation, pause. Don't react immediately. Recognize the pattern. Keep your response simple. Set a clear boundary. Walk away when necessary. Talk to someone you trust when you need support. And remember, you don't have to defeat difficult people. You don't have to change them. You simply need to learn how to stop their behavior from taking over your peace. Because sometimes the strongest response isn't a louder argument. It's a calm decision to say, "This isn't healthy for me, and I don't have to participate."